Hi and welcome to Module 7, and this module is called Organic Chemistry. So before we rush in to organic chemistry and all the components and the outcomes that we need to meet, we need to first of all look at, well, what is organic chemistry? So when we talk about organic chemistry is about that element carbon. So carbon is an element with 6 electrons, 2 in its first shell, 4 in its outside shell. So this 4 in its outside shell is its valence electrons, and so that 4 electrons in the outside shell is giving us its valency. Now carbon's a special element, and the reason it's a special element is because of the millions of different compounds it can form, and it is the constituent of all living things and many non-living things. Now the huge number of carbon in society is due to the ability of carbon to form many different bonds, and it forms strong bonds with other carbon, and it also can make chains and rings, but it can also make a lot of other stable bonds when it bonds with other elements. So when we look at this, we are looking at the type of bonding that's going to occur between a carbon and another carbon is a covalent bond, and they are sharing those electrons. So these type of bonds can be single, double, or triple bonds, with single being the most common here. And these bonds, if you remember back to those covalent bonds that we looked at before, are really strong bonds. And the number of bonds from single to double to triple, the more bonds in that regard, the stronger the bonds are between those carbons. So carbon also forms pretty strong bonds with hydrogen, and these ones are considered to be non-polar because the electronegativity, thinking back to our year 11 module, our electronegativity isn't so different between the carbon and the hydrogen. But it can also form some stable polar bonds with oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and all those halogens, our group 7 elements, because that electronegativity is different there. So the first part we're going to look at really is the type of compounds that are involved. We can see that these carbon compounds are everywhere. They're in the fuels we burn, the polymers, so our bouncing balls and things like that, the foods we eat and so forth. It makes up 80% of our known compounds, so they're quite important. The first group that we're going to look at are called hydrocarbons, and as the name suggests, there's carbons and then there's the hydrogens that are bonding with the carbon. And it forms, again, those covalent bonds. So what we're looking at is different ways that these can form. So sometimes we can get carbon bonding to another carbon, and it's got the 4 single bonds around us. We can sometimes have one double bond and 2 singles, or we can have a triple bond and then just 1 single bond off to the side. So when we look at our hydrocarbons are our simplest organic molecules. They only contain carbon and hydrogen, and we can get a huge array of different compounds just from that alone. So that's our introduction today. I'm going to now go on to video number 2, where we're going to look at the nomenclature of naming these organic molecules. So turn in to volume 2.